Get me wrong, takes a lot to please me. Hurt and wrong.
John Phillips was a member of the American band the Mamas and the Papas in the 60s. In fact, he has been considered their leader. He was their primary songwriter and arranger. The band fell apart in 1968, then John Phillips has a solo career, or had a solo career. However, this consisted in 1970 of one solo album and one soundtrack album, and he did not release anything else for the rest of his life. He struggled with substance addictions and all sorts of problems in his personal life, and finally died in 2001. After he died, several of his unreleased musical projects have been released. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was John Phillips' solo album that was released in 1970. So the only one that was kind of genuinely a solo album that was released during his lifetime. I've talked about the way I do this several times before, but I know people kind of are dipping in on a video by video basis sometimes, so I'll do it again. My process generally is to listen to an album twice, and particularly if I don't know an album or know very little about the act, I will try and do that so that my first listen is without any extra background or reading. Then I confess, very quick reading and looking up the background of the album and the artist and, finding something about them to get some context. And then I have another listen in context. Now, mostly this helps. Sometimes the context makes a huge difference to the way that I view the album. But what I still try and do is not let the personal lives of the artists have that much of an effect on the way I think about the music as I listen to it as music. And the reason why I'm saying this is on this occasion I found that a little difficult because John Phillips' personal life had a lot of problems in it. And it's hard not to then listen to the album and think about the fact that he was probably struggling with all sorts of issues at this time in his life. I'm not going to go into details. So maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. Anyway, let's get into the review proper. So stylistically, I would say there are elements here that are kind of, knowing that he's come out of the Mamas and Papas are not a surprise. So it sounds quite like 60s hippie movement music, not the more psychedelic end, but the more kind of, songwriter Mamas and Papas kind of stuff. There's definitely a large element of what I might call country folk in here. There's country sounds, there's steel guitars going on, and some of the rhythms are kind of country. The singing isn't really country, and I would definitely say I wouldn't peg this as kind of mainline country like Emmylou Harris a couple of albums ago is. And so, have I mentioned Bob Dylan? Yeah, I think it's similar in some ways to the Bob Dylan kind of take on folk with those kind of country elements in it at times. But then it's kind of it's coming out of that and leaning into what I think was being the singer-songwriter genre. So this was stuff that was going on in the 70s. So this is 1970, and we're coming into that, where the focus would be a solo person rather than a band. And often the music that they used would be quite varied in style. So I'm thinking of people like, certainly, Simon and Garfunkel were a little earlier, but Paul Simon as he comes into the 70s, and Elton John, very strongly, I would say, was quite varied here. But there's a lot of others, James Taylor, and a whole load of great people coming through this. And I like this kind of singer-songwriter feel. I like the variety that is represented in that, and it holds together because it's got the same voice, and, often the same musicians as well. So, and it becomes all about the songs, and that I like as well because I really respect good songwriting, and so there's quite a lot to these songs here. Some of them are a bit dark at times, which kind of belies the way he sings them. Some of them are about people that he knew, apparently. There's some of it is obviously coded stuff that, I can't necessarily decode. But it's strong songwriting, I would say. His voice, I would also say, is not the strongest voice, and I believe that he recognised that. He tended to sing as a backing singer in the Mamas and Papas and let the others take the lead. But I quite like his delivery on this album. It's relaxed. It's got a kind of swoop where he kind of slides around on the notes a bit, and it gives it a kind of laid back and cool feel. The album has been voted as being one of the coolest albums of all time, apparently, according to some list. And I would say, it's very pleasant to listen to. Sometimes when you dig into the words, they're maybe kind of a little, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But a lot of them are more straightforward as well. Stylistically, it's a nice mix. I enjoyed it. I would definitely play it again. This is the sort of stuff that I like. How do you feel about this album? Please let me know in the comments down below. That's it from me for now.
Floating down the beach, her laughter. Someone's laughing with the girl that I used to be after. Little Richard singing to me. Tutti frutti once again.